Welcome to Global Studies 9.
Ancient Rome, Chapter 6, Section 1, the Roman Republic. So Rome. The legacy of Rome lived on even after Rome fell. And here are just two quick examples, Napoleon and Tsar Nicholas. So we'll start with Napoleon. If you notice in that picture earlier, he's dressed up like a Roman emperor. He always looked up towards the Romans in regards to their culture, and it just shows you that the legacy of Rome lives on hundreds of years after Rome disappears through guys like Napoleon. Another example is the Tsar Nicholas from Russia, and in this case, it's not specifically him, but it's just the fact that his title is Tsar, which sounds like Caesar, which is where the word Tsar comes from in Russia. So again, it's borrowed from Rome. Now, the earliest origins of Rome are traced back to a mythical beginning of two brothers, Romulus and Remus, who are raised by a wolf, and they're both great leaders, but they quarrel over how to start a new city, and in this quarrel, Romulus ends up killing Remus. So Romulus ends up being the founder of the city. And this is all foreshadow for Roman history, because Rome goes through so many internal wars and internal battles that, in a sense, this mythical beginning of the quarrel between the two brothers is a foreshadow for the rest of Roman history. And the two brothers live on today, interestingly enough, in the soccer world, where we see the soccer team AS Roma, and if you look closely at their badge, here's a zoomed in version, you'll notice the two brothers are there. There's Romulus, Remus, and the supposed wolf that raised the two brothers. Now, the Roman Republic was set in an area very ideal for civilization to flourish. It's right along various seas, and it gives Rome a lot of opportunity to trade, and a nice reminder to have here, and this applies towards later on as well when you look at Italy, is the shape here. It looks like a boot, and that's how a lot of people remember the shape of Italy. And Rome would sort of be on that west side, maybe that shin part of that boot. Now, early on, Latins and Greeks and Etruscans all battled for dominating the region, and the Etruscan people were the first to control what would be modern-day Rome. So these people ruled with kings, so kind of like a monarchy system, and it wasn't until about 500 BC where Romans were able to overthrow Etruscans and start a republic, so a government in which citizens elect their leaders. Although it's not totally a republic in the sense that it's very limited. It kind of reminds you of the Greeks, right? They have people are involved. When they say people, they're talking about just men. And when they're talking about just men, they're talking about just rich men. So not really everyone in society has a say in regards to who is going to be leader. So in the early republic, Rome used a system where they had two consuls, two leaders. So one led the army while one led the government. And this is a very interesting system because it's not like we have two prime ministers or two presidents in a lot of countries today. But back then, this was the ideal way. That way you can have one leader when you're trying to expand your territory and one leader to take care of what's at home. You had the Senate, which was chosen from the upper class, and then you also had democratic assemblies, which had individuals like tribunes, and that's a key word there. Those are people that are representing the plebeians, so the regular people. Now, at times, dictators were appointed. So instead of having two leaders, one leader was appointed. And the reason for having a dictator is that dictators are more efficient, right? They can make decisions quicker, whether they're popular or not. So, there's a list of dictators throughout history. Generally, people associate dictators with a very negative view, and that's because, it's usually preferred that people make the decisions collectively instead of one individual. But at the same time, in a time of crisis, it's nice to have someone who can make swift decisions just like that. So most of those who lived in Rome were plebeians. They were the average people, the farmers, the merchants. And what's interesting is they could not vote. Right? They can elect a tribune who would have a seat in the General Assembly, who would be able to speak on behalf of them, but the plebs did not have a vote. The patricians did, and they held most of the power. Now, when we compare the two governments between the United States of America and Rome, you'll notice there's certain similarities, and there's also clearly some differences. So part of the reasons why there are these similarities is because the U.S., when creating their own government, did look at other countries, for example, the United Kingdom, but they also looked at places like Rome when they were trying to figure out their type of government system. The early republic also saw the first set of rules the Romans saw, known as the 12 tables. And what's very interesting here is, like the Code of Hammurabi, laws do not apply equally to everyone. So depending on your position, laws were different. Rome's location near the Mediterranean Sea made it just a great place for trade, which is one reason why it also prospered economically. Here's sort of a map giving you an idea of all the trade routes Rome has. Rome is roughly in that center of that map. And Rome itself, of course, has things like olives. But also, if you see they go north, you have sheep. You go east, you find pigs. You've got all these different items that Rome can trade, and all these trade routes, whether by land or by sea. Now, the Roman army played a key part in Rome's expansion. First of all, Rome's army was very strong, and part of this had to do with their culture, very similar to the Greeks, where they were focused on training the mind just as much as training the body from a young age. So many of their young men were very capable of being great soldiers and good fighters. Now, the Roman legion would go on to be very well disciplined and very well trained, but at the same time this creates an issue, and the issue is that a lot of these soldiers, their loyalty didn't really lie with Rome. Rather, they were loyal towards each other, or they were loyal towards their general. And this actually goes on to play a key role when we talk about Julius Caesar, a very successful general who later on becomes the dictator of Rome. So Rome quickly spreads, and they're able to conquer areas around them using this very important word that is used throughout history called defensive aggression. So what this means is they'll say, oh, well, we're going to be attacked, so we're going to attack you first. So if there's a potential enemy, they preemptively attack. And this strategy has been used by Napoleon, Hitler, Hideki Tojo, just various historical figures throughout the years have used this strategy where they say, oh, I know you're going to attack me, so I'm going to attack you first. So this is defensive aggression. And by 272 BC, you can see that Rome has spread from that little tiny part of the center of what would be Italy today to pretty much most of Italy today. Now, Rome goes on to expand, but they have one major rival in the area, and that's Carthage, which would be located in modern northern Africa. And they go through 3 wars, also known as the Punic Wars, for almost 100 years with Carthage, which is led by Hannibal. Now, the big difference for this northern African area was their soldiers were not their local people. Instead, most of their military was made out of mercenaries, people paid to fight. And this had a disadvantage because people paid to fight could easily run away, which is what eventually happens, is when things got tough, people would just run away because they were already paid anyways. So a lot of the accounts we have in regards to Carthage is based on Romans because the Carthaginians did not leave any written records. We know that Hannibal was a very interesting man, very interesting general. He had literally an elephant army, or he had elephants fighting for him, and he had this strategy of, instead of facing the Romans straight on, if you look there at Carthage, you'll notice he went all the way around through the Iberian Peninsula, through the area of the Gauls, and he attacked Italy from the north. So at first the Romans were caught by surprise, but eventually, under their leader, General Scipio, they decided to attack Carthage, and this forced the Carthaginians to go back to Carthage, but by then it was too late. Carthage couldn't go back to protect their own land, and the Romans had defeated Hannibal and the Carthaginians. There's some pictures giving you an idea of his elephant army. Very interesting in the sense that elephants are hard to control, so sometimes these elephants would actually get out of control and attack their own men. And they would use weird strategies like having the elephants drink alcohol so that the elephants would become extra aggressive before wartime. And finally, at the last battle, Carthage is burned down to the ground and those in Carthage are enslaved. And now Rome is very big, right? It's not just that little boot of Italy, but it's also including what would be Northern Africa today. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Have an excellent day. Goodbye.